Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today I want to take just a moment to talk about a couple other YouTube channels that you'll probably enjoy and learn from if you enjoy and learn from the stuff we have here on Forgotten Weapons. Now, there are a lot of other channels out there with shooting footage, and a lot of them are quite good, but there are a couple in particular that I have found that are run by people who are really passionate about specific areas of firearm history, and people who take the time to do really in-depth, high-quality work on specific guns. Now, I have kind of made a deliberate choice to have a large volume of content, and that does restrict my ability to spend a lot of time on any one particular gun. So, to some extent, what you find here is going to be a lot of relatively shallow information. Now, maybe not shallow in comparison to a lot of what's out there, but compared to these guys coming up, you'll find a lot more information on specific things from them than you will from me. So let's start at the top. First off, c&rsenal. As a lot of, I've discovered as a lot of European viewers don't recognize, c&rsenal is a clever play on words on the C&R US firearms license, which stands for Curio and Relic. And so they took that and tacked the word arsenal onto the end, and you end up with c&rsenal. c&rsenal is a channel run by Othais and May, and they are focusing almost exclusively, well, exclusively right now, on World War I firearms in collaboration with the Great War. And they go into a level of depth that is far greater than what you'll find here on Forgotten Weapons. So, if you're interested in anything specifically from World War I, definitely take a look at Othais and May's work.
Trials program to see if there's any merit here whatsoever. One sergeant and 3 enlisted men of the 123rd Royal Welsh Fusiliers would be enlisted to test the following rifles: a Kropatschek, a Hotchkiss, a Winchester 1876, that Lee rifle of ours, the Gardner rifle, the Green rifle, and the Vetterli. They would also test 2 additional systems, the Krinka quick loader and the Mayhew cartridge holder. Neither obviously survived the trials for long. Our star, the Remington Lee, was fitted with a Martini Henry pattern barrel, 5-round single-stack magazine, and chambered for the .45 caliber Gatling cartridge for these tests. In May of 1880, one of the test Winchesters had a cartridge detonate in the tube, injuring the shooter. From this point, centerfire tube magazines were dismissed from the trials. So goodbye Winchester, Kropatschek, and Hotchkiss. The Vetterli managed to skirt the rules by being a rimfire cartridge, but this had its own problems, and so it too would fail out. The Gardner gun was a bit outdated and had several failures. Gardner himself was busy with his machine gun and declined to update the gun, so there went that. Both the Green and the Lee would hold their own, each facing issues with extraction, but both generally being seen as worth further investigation. I should also mention a couple Mausers were brought in, although these were more for comparison tests and often fitted with different magazine systems to see, what are we doing? Are we separating out the action from the magazine? Is the magazine good and the action bad, or whatever?
Next up, we have Chris Tachi. Chris Tachi is a definite subject matter expert on the AR-15. He is in fact the author of the collector grade book Black Rifle 2, which is the history of the M16 in the 21st century, or into the 21st century. He has an absolute wealth of knowledge on that platform, and while his videos do extend beyond just the AR, that is a particular point of expertise of his. So, one particular video of his that jumped out at me was an hour-long explanation of the M16 in Vietnam. It's a fantastic video. It goes into a lot of depth on what was going on, what caused the problems, what were the controversies with the M16, what's true and what's rumor.
It caused a couple issues. First, bolts to break. It caused failures to extract. It had also what's called bolt carrier bounce. What bolt carrier bounce is when the rifle is placed in automatic, the bolt carrier group is moved rearward. The auto sear tips back, and the hammer is actually caught by the automatic sear. So the bolt carrier reaches its full rearward motion, and then the spring, recoil spring or action spring, starts pushing the bolt forward. As the bolt moves into the lock position and goes to lock, the bottom portion of the bolt carrier actually tips the auto sear, and it releases the hammer to fire. Well, there was such excessive speed in here due to the higher cyclic rate that at the same moment the hammer would drop and fire, the bolt carrier would actually bounce off of the receiver extension. So the bolt was closing and then bouncing back momentarily. At that point, the hammer would follow, and the hammer would ride the frying pan forward until the bolt locked. There wasn't enough energy to set the cartridge case off, or the primer off in the cartridge case.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of technical detail you'll enjoy if you're already watching Forgotten Weapons. Now, third up, we have a channel called Cap and Ball. This is run by a Hungarian gentleman by the name of Balázs Németh. Hopefully I didn't butcher his name too badly. I apologize, Balázs. And he goes into a lot of detail on black powder firearms. So mostly military, revolvers, muzzleloading revolvers, muzzleloading and cartridge rifles, and a bit more. And he has an interesting perspective being in Hungary, where a lot of the European black powder rifles were actually being used. He has a nice collection of both originals and reproduction guns, and a really good understanding of how these were actually used. And one thing I've noticed about all of these channels in general are they get stuff right that I have gotten wrong. And an excellent example of that is Balázs's work on the Dreyse rifle. I did a video on the 1860 Dreyse a couple of years ago, I think at this point, and I haven't actually shot one myself, and I fell victim to one of the misunderstandings about them, which is that they lacked any obturation seal and thus blew gas back in the face of their users. In fact, they did not. And Balázs goes into this in some detail in his video and has some really cool shooting footage. In this particular case, here's a clip of his work on a video specifically about the Battle of Königgrätz, which was a showdown between the Dreyse and the Lorenz muzzleloader.
Using the Dreyse rifle and the fire tactic meant something else. It meant that the soldier can lie down on the ground, can use any kind of cover. He is not forced to shoot the rifle in the standing position, which is important. Loading the Dreyse rifle was much different. The rifle could stay on the target. I could keep my eyes on the enemy while loading, and I could stay lower than while loading the Lorenz rifle. And that's it. I don't have to move. I can use the cover. And this is one very basic part of the fire tactic.
I'm always interested when I find people who have the hands-on experience and know more than I do. Those are the people that I want to learn from. And this is a classic example. So unfortunately, I can't go back and edit existing videos, but I look forward to the chance to do another piece on it, some variant of the Dreyse myself and correct that previous mistake of mine. Moving on, fourth channel I would like to point out to you is called British Muzzleloader, which is a little bit of a misrepresentation. It's apparently the channel originally was going to focus on the British muzzleloading 1853 rifle, but expanded into kind of an overview of British Victorian military arms in general, or military rifles in general. It's run out of Canada by a gentleman who has not only the firearms, but also a really cool bit of reenacting kit and uniform. And I particularly enjoy watching his discussion of how these Victorian arms were actually going to be used in service. A classic example here, and this is something a lot of people ask about, on the Lee Metford rifles, what's the deal with having one magazine and having it chained to the rifle? That doesn't really mesh with a lot of people's vision of how magazine-fed rifles are supposed to be used today. So let's take a look at British Muzzleloader explaining how that chain is actually put to use.
In order to uncharge the magazine, the following drill was used. Uncharge magazine! By placing the thumb on top of the bolt and the index finger on the magazine release, squeezing it, the magazine was removed. It was then rotated on its link so that it lay flat against the bottom of the rifle, which was then rotated to the left. This presented the magazine in a handy position for uncharging. The rounds were then withdrawn from the magazine and returned to the pouch. Once the last round was withdrawn, the magazine was reseated in the body of the rifle. Having charged the magazine fire could then be achieved. Individual by numbers, kneeling! Magazine ready!
All right, last but not least, we have a channel. I have no idea what this means. The channel name is VBBSMYT. What I do know is it's run by a British gentleman who is an exceptionally talented CAD CAM artist, and as a hobby, he puts together really awesome, excellently technical animations of, in particular, mostly old machine guns. So you can actually get this awesome view both externally and internally to see exactly what the gun is doing all the way through its course of fire. And not only does he put together the animations, model the parts and the system, but then also goes through and shows you each part of the gun working in sequence, slowed down and sped up, so you get a really good, real understanding of how the guns work. Check out his bit here on the Maxim 08. So I'm always looking for places where I can learn more than I already know, and these are 5 specific channels that have helped me to do that. So hopefully they'll help you also learn more yourselves. If you have any other suggestions for really cool channels, by all means, share them down in the comments below, and we can all take a look at them and grow as a community. Thanks for watching.